Right, well, folks, it's just rolled over to 11 o'clock, so we'll get underway in a second. Just to remind you that this session is being recorded, and as I'm sure most of you by now know, these recordings are available on our website on the Coffee and Conversation page. To make life easier for ourselves, if you could rename yourselves with perhaps your name and where you're from, that gives us a good idea of who we're actually talking to. And as always, if you've got questions, comments, stick them in the chat. That chat will be sent to you as well at the end of the session, or rather somewhere in the next 24 hours probably, to be perfectly honest. And as usual, there's likely to be some conversation today. In fact, we encourage it, and just allow people to say what they need to say without jumping in or being disrespectful. That would be great. And my slides aren't working. Don't you love that? Outdoors Queensland respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands where we all gather across the state. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and we acknowledge the important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples play on the land, sky and waterways that we use for outdoor activities. Right. We also thank and acknowledge the Queensland Government for sponsoring or supporting Outdoors Queensland. Much of our funding comes from the government, and we appreciate the work that they do on our behalf in the background as well. So welcome to today's session. My name is Mark Squires. As you are probably already noticing, that I'm not Dom Courtney. Dom is currently sitting in a shuttle bus at outside Cairns Airport, waiting to pick up a car. He's heading off to the OEAQ Falls Forum tomorrow. So he is joining us. He is with us, but on his phone, and he'll be available for comment and things a bit later on if that is necessary. Charlie Collins, our marketing and communications manager, is also with us today, and so she'll be helping out, dropping links and bits and pieces into the chat as we go along. So welcome to you all. Welcome to particularly members of Outdoors Queensland. Those that aren't, we'd encourage you to join, but you're all welcome whichever. And as I said before, the recordings of these sessions are available on our website, and those who attend today, get sent a copy of that recording and also the chat as well, so that you get links and things shared with you later on. So agenda for today, it's fairly short and sweet, but I do suspect that the last item, the vaccinations and vaccination mandates, will probably take up a fair chunk of the conversation today. But initially, we've got an announcement about some new land being created as parkland. Summer storm season. We have a guest today, Peter Gould from Scouts Queensland, here to talk to you about one of their new training programs. And there'll be a couple of updates on COVID and, of course, the vaccinations. So, Currumbin Eco Parkland. 148 hectares of land at Currumbin have been purchased by the government and will be turned into a large eco parkland. Community consultation for exactly how that will look and what that parkland will include will be opening very soon. We have a news story on it on our webpage, and as soon as the links for that consultation open up, we'll share those with you as well. This is, I guess, more of a reminder. We're already seeing large parts of the state underwater. This is the season for it. So our request to you is that you be safe, do the right thing, encourage those who work for you, those who you work with, the participants on your programs and courses and activities, do the right thing and stay safe. We do have quite a number of resources on our website, which may or may not be useful for you. And again, Charlie will share those in the chat, and they'll be available afterwards. But we have pages on outdoor safety, bushfire preparedness. Our weather, wind and tides page has a lot of interesting stuff on it, including some new videos that have been just released by Get Ready Queensland. These are sort of 3D animations that kind of stick a presenter right in the middle of the storm or the flood. And that they're quite educational, particularly for those who haven't necessarily been through those kind of experiences. And of course, the Australia Activity Standards, you should be going to those on a regular basis and just make sure you're up with what's going on. Now, I just noticed that Kathy Crittenden has joined us from Yorkshire. I had an email from Kathy this morning. Kathy, you were out paddling today, was it? Or was it yesterday at -3 degrees on the lake somewhere? And I think you're still muted there, Kathy.
Okay, that's better? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Too cold for the tourists, so I had the lake to myself.
Yeah, I did make the comment to Kathy this morning that probably very few Queenslanders will be willing to get out to go kayaking at -3 degrees. But I guess Yorkshire this time of year, it's probably the norm. But nice to have you, Kathy.
Thank you.
I would like to hand over to Peter Gould now from Scouts Queensland, who's here to talk to you about their new Scouts Outdoor Adventure Program, or SOAP for short. Peter, you are a co-host, so you can share your screen. I will just stop sharing mine and you can take over.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome along to Coffee and Conversations. Really pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you about our new SOAP program. So we're obviously actively trying to offer a more adventurous program for all of our members. And as part of that, we've put together this new program to provide an intensive opportunity for our members to be able to access obviously accredited training through our RTO, which is the Scouts Australia Institute of Training. And so we've put together the SOAP program based around 1 weekend a month, and people are able to gather in and basically be a bit of a cohort, and over a 10-month sort of block model, work their way up to completing all of their Certificate 3 and outdoor leadership components, and probably go a long way to actually doing their units for their Certificate 4 in outdoor leadership. We've also got some connections there where there'll be some work experience for those people to be able to tap into so that they can complete all their bits and pieces. So why would I want to share this with the broader industry? I suppose we acknowledge that sometimes accessing accredited training for people is difficult in Queensland. We've got limited amount of public provider opportunities, and most of those are a full-time basis. And obviously with the private providers that are fee for service, often some of their programs are short on people to attend and things like that. So we're offering this as an opportunity for people from the community to join our ranks as an activity leader member, and that would give them an opportunity to participate in the SOAP program and build up all of their opportunities to get their training completed, and obviously work their way through and get their formal qualifications. So everything I think is in the flyer. That thanks, Mark, for sharing that, and obviously we've catered it for people that are working, whether they be casually working, trying to fit in with the camps world, or having normal sort of jobs that are quite dull and boring, and they're trying to find new opportunities to work in the outdoors. So we've used that weekend intensive model to do that, and obviously we'll be making use of some online sort of sessions to sort of bolster those. But each of the 10 block weekends has got a theme, and should be a lot of fun as well. And obviously we are obviously not offering this as a program that is trying to generate high fees, because we're just basically covering our processing fees and hiring equipment and all that sort of thing. So I think it's a low cost option for people to get the accredited training they may not be able to access. And we're obviously getting good response from sort of our members that are at the other end of high school, and they're using this as an opportunity to pick up their Cert 3 and get their points for their QCE and things like that, and then having a bit of fun on some weekends as well. So yeah, that was the general sort of sharing we'd like to have, and if anybody had any questions, I'd be happy to take them from the floor. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, Peter. Any questions for Peter before we move on?
Whereabouts are you based, Pete? In Brizzy?
We're based in Brizzy. We're going to run the program in a southeast format this time, but certainly we're upskilling a couple of our guys, Cairns Townsville way, to maybe take the program next year to the regional areas. So we're just sort of seeing how we go as we go. So yeah. Cool. Hello, Dave Bailey. Nice to see you.
All right. If there's nothing else from Pete, I'll rather any more questions for Pete, I'll go back to sharing my screen again.
Thanks, Mark.
Now, Charlie has shared the link to the story about the Scouts Outdoor Adventure Program on our website, and there are links there to the Scouts information as well. So the ongoing topic of COVID updates and restrictions. So as you all know, on December 17th, the government anticipates that 80% of us will be double vaccinated, and things are going to change. Some of those restrictions are to be expected and probably worth following, and others are probably going to be a challenge for our sector. So the big changes are going to be things like proof of vaccination status required going to many venues, and restrictions for the non-vaccinated. Of course, essential services won't be a problem. They'll still be available to non-vaccinated, but generally speaking, we would encourage people to get vaccinated and to really open up what they can and what others can do. If you've got any comments, people, about all this, please do jump in with questions or comments. Possibly you've already seen this. This is the public and health social measures from the government, looking at what the vaccinated can and the unvaccinated, I guess, cannot do. I won't read it all out. You can read it. It's the link will be provided in the notes if it's not already there, and you can go through it at your leisure. But basically, there's quite a bit of stuff that the non-vaccinated will be, I guess, restricted in what they can do. Proof of vaccination. Probably, again, most of you are on top of all this, but it is the way to prove you're vaccinated is to carry your certificate with you, either in a hard copy for those that don't have a phone, which is very few of us these days. And if you haven't already done so, you can add that certificate to your Check in Queensland app. It's a very straightforward process. I did it about 3 minutes myself. You can also add your partners, your family members, workers, whatever you choose, to your phone as well if you are regularly checking in other people. Again, there's a good web page on the government site that explains how to do that, and again the link for that will come up very shortly. So I just noticed that Tanya's had a question there about she's wanting to know know more about the most recent mandate announcement around educational settings. Does this include outdoor education centres? Yeah, very good question, Tanya. And at this stage, whilst it's likely, possibly the expectation, at this stage it's unclear, and we are still waiting on confirmation about that. One of the comments that the Premier made the other day in her announcement was that because school children particularly are unable to get vaccinations and are therefore most vulnerable, it really is important that we all do whatever we can to ensure their health and safety, which by implication means everybody getting vaccinated. So no great news there, Tanya, but we are waiting and we're expecting. I wonder, Dom, are you with us at the moment?
Hey, Mark. Yeah, I'm now in the car hire place. on that one, I understand, and I'm not. I participated in a Queensland Small Business Commissioner webinar yesterday, which we promoted earlier in the week. I think it was in our newsletter, and in that they said they understand that the public health direction is actually going to be released next Friday, so on the 10th. So everyone will have a week to actually see the wording of it, which is critical. The other thing on whether the education settings covers school camps, it's actually a bit up in the air, and I've asked that question specifically of education, who've also asked their some question from Queensland Health. So they've said they'll update their frequently asked questions. I've been on the plane this morning, so I haven't checked it this morning to see if they've updated the education frequently asked questions on the website. But I guess it's wait and see on that.
Not this morning, Dom. Nothing.
Yeah, I checked those two this morning, Dom. They have been updated.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I guess that's probably the key thing. Just keep checking. This is what I'll be doing, as well as hoping to get advice directly, but also checking their frequently asked questions on their website and seeing what's there, because they've had that question about a lot of different services. It could be a school going to a theatre is one of the examples for part of their curriculum. You wouldn't expect that if a theatre doesn't have to vaccinated otherwise, you wouldn't expect them. But the other side of that is part of the education setting, I would say, than a theatre normally is. So it's still it's a live question, I guess. So when we're trying to get an answer to that one as soon as possible.
And as soon as we get that answer, we will publish it. We will send it out to everybody as promptly as we possibly can.
Look, it's pretty clear that they've had, you know, when they announced the mandate, they did announce some fairly specific venues.
Yes.
And outdoor education centres and our sorts of venues were not mentioned in that. I'm aware of some operators who've already decided it's easier just to consider themselves an education institution and are starting to issue directions to staff. I'm not sure whether they've actually got a legal backing to be able to do that yet. Certainly, the public health directions haven't been issued yet, so the actual legal basis for that has not been published yet. And I know that some schools are actually having issues with that with staff, because staff are saying you can't direct us to get vaccinated until the public health direction is made. And you know, this time of year, the context in our industry, I think right throughout this pandemic, we've learned we've really got to wait for the public health direction to be released. And one of the reasons for that is because we actually enjoy some quite specific exemptions for our centres. So, you know, we've always had some exemptions around social distancing, but we've also got the exemptions around check-in. So it's a bit tricky at the moment to advise schools what to do in week one, term one. And of course, particularly independent schools want to know that by no later than today. And we actually don't really have answers. We've taken the approach of just to say, look, please be assured that when term one resumes, we'll be operating according to the government guidelines, whatever they are. And I think that's pretty much the best we can do at this stage.
Yes, and it's also been the pattern that we haven't had a clear direction for our sector until a bit later in the piece as well. So, yeah, definitely we should wait for the directions to come out, hopefully next Friday, as Dom mentioned.
I think the other critical one for us is will students 16 and over need to provide proof of vaccination, because they don't require that to attend school. So it's really a question, we've got that exemption in terms of how they check in at the moment. So whether that exemption around check-in for groups of school-aged children will actually pick up the wording around vaccination status or not, I think is one we need to watch.
Mm-hmm. How does that exemption process work at the moment, Andrew?
Yeah, so it's in the business undertakings direction. It's been there for a long time that because they come as a group, and it's not just school groups, the wording is sporting teams. If it's a group of primarily children accompanied by adults, and it's a sporting group, a community organisation, or a school group. They don't need to use the Check in Queensland app because the assumption is the group organisers have already provided all the contact information.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, obviously the Check in Queensland app is one of the main ways of policing the vaccination mandate. So it'll just be interesting to see which way Queensland Health go with that. Whether, you know, if they take that approach of students don't need to be vaccinated to school to attend school, will they also take that approach to if it's a school group? You know, perhaps the unvaccinated can attend a camp or not. It's not an issue for under 16s, but it's very much a question for, and given how many schools do leadership camps in early term 1, we've certainly been getting questions about that, and we don't have answers. We've just said, look, get back to us when you come back into the school context, so we should have an answer by then as to whether the unvaccinated 16+ student will be able to attend camp or not.
Yes, well, fingers crossed, and that the direction does come out next week.
Well, if it comes out next week, you've only got 1 week of warning before the 17th anyway, and they've left it very late.
Yes, again, part of the course, unfortunately. Anybody else got any comments or questions they want to ask about that?
You don't mind if I just talk for a quick couple of minutes? Is that okay?
Go for your life.
Brad from Wild Projects. Brother, we a lot of the activities that we conduct are on traditionally owned land. So it's you know, whether we're taking youth from schools out on camps, they're not actually done in facilities. They're done on traditionally owned country. So we don't use any form of Queensland check-in app. But we got an online platform called Environmental System Solutions. And so we've created all of our own documents on this platform where for the youth that we work with, whether it's doing conservation work or projects or whatever, we can collect all that data, including COVID check-ins on that Environmental System Solution platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure whether there's other people that, like us, that operate in the bush all the time. It's just a bit hard for us. But anyway, that Environmental System Solution, it works really well for us.
Is that something that you've set up yourselves, or is that a service that's available?
It's a service you can subscribe to use their platform.
Okay.
We use it because we can lock down certain information for traditional owner groups, whether it's sensitive with locations of, you know, significant sites or whatever. We use different school groups, like we might have 5 different schools, so we can lock down participants that only the admin can see information, and whether it's recording units of competencies through our search through conservation, we can upload photos of GPS, mark all that sort of stuff. And
right.
So it's a subscription of about $1,800 a year, but yeah, you've got to create, and you can upload all your safety management systems on there, and it's all online, and it's really handy.
Oh, we might check it out and publish a link to it for other people if they're interested in checking it out as well. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we'd like to have a look at that. Thanks.
There you go. Right, anybody else? Anything else to add? No. Okay. So I dragged this off one of the websites yesterday afternoon, just talking about employers, I guess, responsibility expectations around the vaccination requirements. So an employer must take all reasonable steps to ensure that the worker does not work if they have not met the vaccination requirements. And they need to keep a record of the vaccination information as reported to them and stored securely. On
Mark,
Monday.
I mean, there was that QTIC seminar last Friday.
Yes.
Where the Deputy Commissioner of Police was there. And the comment around some of the, like, if there is mandatory vaccination, an unvaccinated staff person, we're talking more about the hospitality industry, but it will have impact for us. So if an unvaccinated person is working in one of those non-essential areas, that's a criminal act. But the employer can also be found to be complicit to a crime if they're aware of that person's status and are basically turning a blind eye to it. So there's actually quite a high level of expectation placed on employers that I think we need to be aware of. Yeah, and I think more broadly, you know, where we sit, they said that accommodation is essential. The reason for that is they're using a hierarchy of human necessities to make those decisions. So shelter is considered a human necessity. So the actual accommodation, so short-term accommodation is going to be considered essential, which is consistent with previous lockdowns where we weren't actually closed. It was just that our guests couldn't come to us. But then, you know, in the FAQs, there's wording that if you're unvaccinated staying in a hotel, you can't access the bars, cafes, restaurants, and all that sort of thing. So again, for our context, there's the accommodation side, but given, like, particularly if you're a catered campsite or a catered venue, arguably the unvaccinated cannot access those areas. So, I mean, that's something we need to be aware of. I actually asked about shared amenities. So, you know, what about venues that have shared bathroom facilities and that sort of thing? Again, the feedback on that is that's essential. Who knew? So shared bathrooms appear to be considered essential, so they can be used by the unvaccinated, which is probably a good thing. But again, like, this is where the public health direction, I think, will have, you know, details, and given there is a history there of outdoor education centres actually being specifically mentioned and having exemptions, it'll be, yeah, I think we'll all be sweating on next week's drop of the public health direction.
Yeah. Yes, no, I'd forgotten that comment from the police about the criminal offence for pretty much all involved if this unvaccinated staff working where they shouldn't ought to be. Yeah, it's a good point. And the police, the commissioner, deputy commissioner, I think what his title was, he also said that, and again, it applies in hospitality much more than our situations, but the issue of if there are guests arriving who are refusing to be, you know, to either show the certificates or refusing to leave when they're not being vaccinated, then the police will readily attend and deal with that. Useful in a pub on a corner street in the middle of town somewhere, but not so useful out in the bush or many of our locations.
There were some other interesting examples. I mean, that was obviously a group that were particularly interested in hotel kind of operations and accommodation operations. Around that, you know, whether the December 17 vaccine mandate for staff, how it applied, it was pretty clear that it would apply to people in the hospitality area. But they use an example of a maintenance person at a resort facility, which obviously pricked my ears up. You know, what they were really saying there is that they can be unvaccinated, but can't go in to do maintenance into areas where that are only available to vaccinated people. So, you know, they can mow the lawns, they can fix a light bulb in a room, but they can't go into the dining room or cafe or restaurant or bar to do work. And again, then in our context, it's really how, you know, what approach they're going to take with school camp venues and what you know, what a school is going to demand, because they might actually require a higher level than that in terms of, you know, it's very clear there's an urge there to not have children exposed to unvaccinated adults. So there might be a higher standard for us anyway. But that was one example they used. And the other example that was eye-raising was the question, can an unvaccinated person use a swimming pool? So yes, they can access swimming pools and any of the general sort of amenities of, again, more of a hotel resort type scenario, unless there's food service. So if your pool complex has a bar, they can't go in there. But if it's just a swimming pool, it's fine. So there's a bit more information for people there.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Andrew. All right.
Andrew, Mark, it's Dom here, Mark.
Yes.
Can I just a little comment on that one? On that Small Business Commissioner webinar I did yesterday, they were suggesting that it might be possible for pools that have, they actually got an exact question, and they were suggesting that it might be possible that if they have a cafe, that they could just almost section it off as a separate part of their business and say only vaccinated people can go to the cafe part. So I don't know how it's going to work in practice, but I think it's definitely a strong consideration. There seems to be all sorts of examples of things like that where a business crosses over two different parts of it. I would say that Small Business Commissioner, and I haven't got their email address or their website, I'm driving now, but they were more than happy to take queries, and so I would suggest it might be worth, if we can, I'll send you those details, Mark, if we can put them in the chat to share out. But even the Queensland Small Business Commissioner website, they've also got some good information there.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Dom. And as I said before, that the media release that came out on Monday from Di Pharma lists a number of opportunities for small business, which might be useful as well. And again, the link to that story and that media release will be on our in the notes that follow this webinar. So yes, the roadmap has not changed as yet, and nor have the directions. This has been up now for about a month, I think, more. You've all seen it before. I thought I'd just share this with you because it's a statement that we've been putting up on our website, and I think it's possibly something that we are definitely encouraging people to get vaccinated. So we support vaccination against COVID-19, and we encourage everybody to get vaccinated as soon as possible, believing that vaccination is the best way to ensure the health and safety of all outdoor activity operators, participants, and members of the public. I've set up a page on vaccinations on our website that includes this statement and links to the various sort of vaccination resources and services. So this statement is on our website, and it will be on the bottom of most of our e-news and e-bulletins going out going forward. I had a look at the Fair Work Ombudsman page yesterday as well. It doesn't appear to have changed much, but I would anticipate that come the new directions on Friday, if they do get out on Friday, there'll be some changes there as well. But for those concerned about fair work and doing the right thing by the employees rather, this would be a good resource to check out. It's 11:34, and we're pretty much done here, unless there are other questions or comments that people would like to make. That sounds like a no. So this slide just kind of summarizes the sort of things that we do on your behalf and on behalf of the sector. As you know, Dom spends a lot of his time talking to government, talking to sport and rec, talking to land managers and so on, doing what we can to keep you informed as to what's going on and what you need to be on top of. Okay. 11:35. Short meeting is a good meeting. Our next session is on Friday, the 17th of December. but we will definitely be sending out more information prior to that as soon as we get those updates on the direction and on the roadmap. Dom usually finishes these sessions with a little 3-part sort of quote: look after yourself, look after others, and look after our planet. A slight variation on the 3-part quotation. So there are 3 rules to bear in mind. The first rule is that we should look cool at all times, and take this as broadly as you wish. The second rule is that stuff happens. The third rule is that in the event of rule number 2, refer to rule number 1. And on that note, if there's nothing else from anybody, I'll say goodbye.